once you kind of know a community well, I try to consciously connect them with others that I think might be interesting. And some people are just looking for business, and if I see a good match, I'm happy to make that introduction. But I'd much rather kind of understand where people's ambitions are focused. If I can make a really good connection, that makes me very happy because I connect people that I like, hopefully. And I think it's really good for business and just for personal development.
Yeah.
So that idea of being a conscious connector, I think, is something that I think we all do to some extent, but kind of doing it intentionally, I think is very important for our own success and for the success of people that we know and like.
Hello and welcome to today's episode of the Keynote Curators podcast. I am Seth Dechtman, your Keynote Curator. Our guest today is Miguel Nives. But is it Neves or Nives?
It's Neves.
Neves.
Yeah.
Miguel, I want to share with our audience who are primarily meeting professionals or those that operate within the meeting profession world or ecosystem. They may already know you as the editor-in-chief of Skift Meetings. Skift, I believe, used to be a former blog, EventMB, which was founded by Julius Solaris, another friend of the podcast. But where does this podcast find you today?
So I'm based in Denmark. I'm Portuguese originally, but I live in a small town in Denmark called Helleslev, where we moved kind of during the pandemic. So we're pretty remote, but I'm over in Denmark at the moment.
Helleslev. It sounds so Danish, that Dutch, that pronunciation. Well, it's great to have you here and really welcome. I want to share a little bit about Skift Meetings. And, what I'm excited about is that we're kindred spirits here. We're both in the curation process. We're curation brothers, if you will. I know at Skift, from the work you do, you've built a reputation as the go-to online resource for event trends, event tech, innovation, and education. And that's right up our alley here on the podcast, Miguel. Literally thousands of event professionals worldwide read it daily. And, what I'm thrilled and excited about is to do a really deep dive so that our listeners can learn and take away and use insights and get really great curated information from our conversation to be able to apply in their profession, in their day-to-day work. Tell me, as a starting point, Miguel, why do you think Skift Meetings is such a valuable intelligence source for the event industry?
Well, like you said, so Skift Meetings was born out of EventMB, which was previously Event Manager blog that was founded by Julius Solaris in 2008. And I've been a friend of Julius for a long time, kind of followed the journey. And then in 2019, he sold that to Skift, which is a larger company. Skift.com has many, many readers on the travel side. So Skift covers all sides of travel, aviation, hotels, short-term rental, all sorts of, from the business perspective, the business of travel. And so it's a really interesting kind of marriage because EventMB and what is now Skift Meetings has that, reputation for the innovation and the event tech side, also destinations and other things, but mainly on the event tech side. And then Skift has this wealth of knowledge on the travel side. And there's Skift Research as well, which is our research arm that is just focused on reporting and analysis of the business of travel. And so I think, if we're doing our job right, we're able to borrow and kind of take things from those different areas and really present our really big focus, which is innovation in the meetings and events industry, to our audience in a way that's easy to consume, but makes them smarter, makes them make better business decisions. Ultimately, that's what we're here to do. And I'm glad to hear that it's resonating.
What do you think, if we could get right into the heart of the matter and unpack that a little bit, are some of the most important or prevalent, dare I say, obvious innovations that are going on that relate to meeting professionals?
I think we might as well just jump on the elephant right away and talk about AI. I think that's
you could hear it, right? I was right there.
I actually just published on a story about Event Tech Live, which is an event tech. I think the first and kind of the only long-standing event tech event that happened in London last week. I was there. I kind of was looking around the show for innovation. That's always a big focus. And I asked pretty much everybody I met what their highlights were. And everybody sort of had this face of like, well, I was kind of looking for stuff, but I haven't found too much. And
Hmm.
so, yeah, AI is definitely the big thing. At the moment, most of AI is still relatively generic. There are a few exceptions. There are companies that have been putting AI into their platform for a long time, and mainly on the matchmaking and networking side. That seems to be an area where AI has been sort of helping event technology do its job
Sure.
for a long time. But most of the innovations are coming still from a sort of generic perspective. That idea of AI helping people write better copy, whether
Right.
it's emails, websites, that kind of thing, or to create images and video is kind of another big use of it. Now, I don't want to sound like I'm underestimating the impact of that. I think the impact of that is huge. If you think of the kind of event marketing side of the industry, that's a big part of most planners' jobs, even if they're just organizing internal meetings, they still have to invite people, they still have to communicate, FAQs, all sorts of things. So it's a huge kind of help, and it really kind of relieves people of those kind of basic jobs. Like I don't know if somebody's asked to write a press release and they've never done it before. They're going to spend a few hours researching what press releases look like, how they
Right.
should be formatted, etc. But if you just
Many
kind of
drafts.
yeah, exactly. If you throw a few bullet points into something like ChatGPT and say, "Hey, can you spin up a press release around this?" It'll do it in a few seconds. It's not going to be the world's best press release, but the way AI works is it's going to kind of take a bunch of similar press releases and sort of figure out what the pattern is and do something that's pretty decent. And as long as you have the knowledge and resources to go in and tweak that and kind of make that really work for you, it's kind of it's hugely helpful, right? So I
Yeah,
think it's really, really a massive shift in terms of how we work, and I think a lot of tools are going to start implementing AI in them. And I think if you use Gmail, you already have it kind of finish your sentences for you.
that's
That's
right.
AI, right? That's
Yeah,
been happening for a long time, and it's easy for us to be sometimes defensive or sometimes a little scared of AI. But when it just sort of works, it's hard to kind of fight it. I'm not going to turn that feature off and go like it never writes the right words. Like, yeah, sometimes
right.
it gets it wrong, but mostly it's like, yeah, that's pretty close. I might tweak it a little bit. And so I think the way we work is shifting dramatically because of AI. And that's just going to impact things, across a number of different areas. So I'm really excited about that thing. And I thought it's good to get that kind of elephant out of the way right away.
Yeah, and I work with keynote speakers all over the world in every realm, industry, possible stage size, audience type, and AI is being woven into whether it's a topic or utilization of it in their presentation, in their slide deck or videos. Um, the technologists that I work with, those that have begun to really share with event professionals how to implement and how to utilize it. I feel like you said it's the elephant. I think we're in early days. We're not that far down the road, but people are open to it. And one of the great, not great, but a phrase that I personally really like is run towards, if you're a moth, run towards the light or run towards the magnet if you're a magnet, meaning don't be defensive. Don't be afraid. Don't be scared of it. Get interested. It's a tool. It's not the end. It's not going to be the result, but it can be a vehicle for you to accomplish whatever it is that you're doing. Whether you're the event professional or you're an event tech or needing to do some matchmaking, like you said, with vendors and buyers and the like. I think it's so early. It's hard to know where the best uses are. Is there any place in particular that you see AI percolating up, let's say early 2024, or sometime in the near to midterm, specifically for meeting professionals?
I think it's hard to tell, but I think I don't know, maybe midway through 2024, I think we're going to start seeing a real difference between those that are using it and those that aren't. I'm doing a session tomorrow about associations and how they could potentially be using AI, and it's still very early days. Like I was mentioning earlier, there's a lot of potential uses around the copywriting and then the skills, the text skills essentially.
Right.
But that has a huge impact down the line. One of the areas for associations, and I believe some of your listeners will be working in associations and nonprofits. One of the areas there is a lot of nonprofits have a huge amount of content. Maybe it's speakers, maybe it's other kind of demo
Educate. They
sessions.
do a lot of education, a lot of continuing education for sure.
Exactly. And so, one thing that you say, I think you do that with the podcast, is you take snippets and you kind of put out little kind
Hmm.
of bite-sized versions of good points or the key points. That it works really well from a marketing perspective, but a lot of associations and nonprofits are sitting in these massive repositories of content, of valuable content. And a lot of it is sort of, recorded sessions, live stream sessions that are just sort of archived, and not a lot is done with them. And unfortunately, a lot of them just sort of sit there and don't get a lot of views. Sometimes something is very specific and, somebody that wants their credits or whatever really needs to kind of watch this. But a lot of stuff
Right.
is,
Right.
it's not always easy to watch in video. It's not sort of
Right.
edited down to video
Yeah.
formats.
A
But if
term,
you
a
can,
term I've heard they call it idle assets.
yeah, exactly. But if you can take those and use AI to speed up the process, and even, when we trust AI well enough to just do it for us, to change that content into either shorter videos, but also there's this trend of creating kind of chatbots around specific content. So let's say you're, I don't know, like a dentistry society, something like that, and you have years and years of archives of all this great information, and you can create your own chat GPT based only on that content and ask it questions and figure out trends and kind of talk with it essentially. So it's like talk to a body of knowledge. It suddenly becomes really valuable, right? And this is all sort of hypothetical at the moment, but I could see associations that do this becoming much more relevant to younger generations where a lot of people will say younger generations aren't that attracted to the associations. They feel a bit old fashioned, a bit sort of like a heavy ship that doesn't really evolve. But if they have this sort of easy to jump on knowledge that has this chatbot interface and just makes it fun and engaging to learn, I could see, maybe not in the next year, but in the next few years, the associations that embrace that sort of ramping up, getting really popular with younger generations, and ones that don't sort of getting left behind. So this is all very hypothetical, but I think we're at a point where we might start seeing these things kind of diverge.
You want to be able to think about how to apply this new tool, artificial intelligence, even a GPT bot, and go ahead and leverage it on behalf of your membership.
I wanted to mention, I saw an example, I think a couple of weeks ago, which was really interesting at the ICA Congress that was happening in Thailand, I think last week. They used a tool called Project Spark, which is one of the few kind of tools that are specific to the events industry. It has sort of Chat GPT in the background, but then it has a kind of interface that brings it all together. And what they did was they had a sort of interactive session. It's a general session, so quite big, I think 1,000 people, something like that. But they split the room into groups, and then they asked different groups to kind of focus on different questions. And there was feedback from those tables. And what they did was they used Project Spark to kind of summarize that feedback and create a takeaway list of action points and things that were brought up right away during the event. And I think, I'm sure, some of your partners and some of the speakers that you're in touch with do that kind of thing where you facilitate and then you have the parking lot
Sure.
and you have the whiteboard and all that kind of thing. And it's, at least in my experience, I've done a few of these sessions. In my experience, it's quite hard to do that. You sort of need a little break in between that and the next session to sort of summarize things, condense things, kind of make it all make sense. But if an AI assistant can do that for you and you can project that live on the screen and people can literally take it away at the end of the session, that is really good, right? Like that's something that can really make that interactivity in
Yeah.
sessions like that much more digestible and much more useful for the participants, right? Because I think everybody enjoys the discussion, but having those takeaways right away is really another level.
Because the key is, why do we go to these meetings? To network, to interact, but to learn. And the quicker we have the takeaways that are relevant, that can make an immediate lasting impact, the better. How did you become so deeply engaged in the event tech sector? And tell us what it means to be a conscious connector.
I'll take the latter first. I think one of the things that this industry does really well is that networking. You can also spend a lot of time meeting people that maybe don't match, or you can go to a large event and end up meeting a lot of people that don't make a lot of sense for your business and for what you're looking for. So once you kind of know a community well, and for example, I was on the MPI International Board of Directors. I was chapter president for a couple of years of the UK and Ireland chapter. So that was a community that I knew and still know quite well. And when I see new people or I meet someone at an MPI event, I try to consciously connect them with others that I think might be interesting. And some people are just looking for business, and if I see a good match, I'm happy to make that introduction. But I'd much rather kind of understand where people's ambitions are focused, right? If you say,
Hmm.
"Hey, I'm really interested in focusing on this side of the industry, or understanding how this works," or "I'm really interested in incentive travel," and "Hey, I'm in Portugal," or something like that. If I can make a really good connection, that makes me very happy because I connect people that I like, hopefully. And I think it's really good for business and just for personal development.
Yeah.
So that idea of being a conscious connector, I think, is something that I think we all do to some extent, but kind of doing it intentionally, I think is very important for our own success and for the success of people that we know and like.
And rewarding. There's a certain virtue there of generosity of spirit, right? Um,
Absolutely.
there's often when you understand, you know, one of my favorite speakers, Tim Sanders, he says your net worth is your network, and it's not in an avaricial way. It's not in this greedy kind of, I'm going to accumulate a big network and see what I can leverage for me, but really that generosity of spirit, and even dare I say love,
Mhm.
which is the killer app in my mind, where you can bring that forth and understand people, and then it kind of becomes natural. So I see where that conscious connector piece of it is. Talk to me a little bit about the commoditization of, things you've blogged about social media, and how it's turning off people, no longer want to feel used, the opposite of what we just touched on, understanding people and their ambitions or their aspirations, and how you might be able to align and foment and encourage that. But people are feeling manipulated, used, lied to, even.
Hmm.
Personal media, you've described this, and why creating meaningful online content that can impact people, even on a small scale, is still essential. Talk to us a little bit about that.
So throughout my career, I've always been involved with kind of technology. And then at one point, I worked for the Amex Group and I became their social media manager and kind of developed their social media strategy. This was a while back. We're talking between 2011 to 2017.
That
But
feels
it's
like a
been a
century. That feels like a century ago.
Yeah, it was a fun time. Twitter was sort of becoming a big thing at that point. It started having images and videos, and Facebook Live was really hot for a while. We did a lot of sort of live Facebooking from the trade shows, which was fun. But social media has become kind of something that everybody does. I remember I used to do sort of social media training, and it was still at the point of kind of convincing people that social media was important. I don't think anybody needs convincing now. I think very few businesses, at least from a sort of public facing perspective, even in a B2B world, are not on social media. So I think everybody understands the importance of it. But when you kind of get deep into it, there's still a little bit of that idea that, the intern can kind of do social media, or it's something that can just be sort of added on. And I'm a big believer that if you're going to do social media, then everybody in the company needs to understand it to some extent. They don't have to be experts, but they need to
Right.
understand it. They need to get involved. And the companies that do best in my mind of social media are the ones where the CEO gets involved, where the CEO gets it and the other people kind of support the CEO, and I think that's the best way to do that. But I think there's also this huge kind of focus on the amount of kind of views something gets and likes and things like that. And
Yeah.
I follow a lot of people on LinkedIn. LinkedIn is sort of my main social media avenue at the moment. And I follow a lot of people that sort of, maybe not so much in public, but in private will be like, oh yeah, I posted that and it got like 600 likes and it was like a big deal for me. And I understand the need for people to be active and for their social media presence to be successful and kind of bring them business. But I think it's important that we also remind ourselves that it only takes one person seeing that. It only takes one view from the right person, someone who's looking for the
That's
service
right.
that you're offering,
That's
for
right.
that post to make a
Yeah.
difference. And so when I talk about this kind of idea of like, let's think about it as personal media rather than social media, what I'm really saying is I don't think we should focus so much on these metrics and on
Mm,
always, being clickbaitish so that you get more likes and more views. I actually think there's a real benefit to being true to yourself, true to your
mm,
mission and what you're trying to say. And yes, putting content out there consciously and regularly so that that present kind of makes sense, because it is important for you to sort of appear in people's feeds,
yeah.
but you want to appear in people's feeds with a core message that's important to you. You can repeat it many times. Most people won't see every post that you do, so it's not something that you have to sort of stop saying. You've already said
Yeah.
that. But I think it's easy for us to forget, in this world of mass media and getting thousands of emails out, that actually a DM, like a one personal message to the person that matters with their permission, it's something that's interesting for them, could make all the difference that thousands and thousands of views won't. And so, yeah, it's kind of my call to action of like, don't forget what your core message is. Talk about that regularly, talk to your audience, and just be human, because if you're
Yeah.
only doing it for the likes, ultimately it shows. And I get turned off by that, and I don't think I'm the only one.
Yeah. I'll speak for myself. I could do a whole podcast series on this topic because I'll use the words, you're so, and it could be after living in the United Kingdom, you're so polite and kind, but they're vanity measures. It was a smirk of recognition or a laugh of recognition in my reaction to what you just said, because my team, we post on mostly like you on LinkedIn. And I always tell them, the most important metric is that one or however many interactions or provocations, as I like to call them, that we begin to engage in a conversation that could ultimately lead to whether it's business, a transaction, a partnership, or paying it forward and connecting them or another contact with somebody who it makes more sense for. I tell them we could get 1 million likes, 1 million views, but if it's not forwarding our intention, it doesn't matter. And I think that the vanity of it, the pendulum, hopefully is swinging back, because you asked me when you came on here, what is my intention here? My intention is just that we're looking to provide curated insights and curated material for the tribe of meeting professionals that we work with and aspire to work with. And that can be you, Julius, MPI, Site, whomever, any trade association, all of our corporate partners, buyers, clients, and any speakers out there, so that we can build the conversation, understand, for example, artificial intelligence or anything else that's going on. So I really love that idea of, it's not just social media itself, the personal media, because it is personal, right? And I just wanted to ask you about that because it really spoke to me.
Yeah.
So
Well,
thank you,
thank you.
thank you.
Glad to hear that. I think it is personal when it's done right. I used to do this experiment when I was kind of demonstrating this, which I would take exactly the same message and I would mock it up as a brand post on LinkedIn. And I would mock it up then as a, post from the CEO. And people would always say the CEO's post was much more engaging. Like they would
Hmm.
read that rather than the brand
Yeah,
post. And it's pretty obvious, right? So the more
right.
we can make it personal and understand what people are all about through these social media channels, I think then we're doing our
Yeah.
community a service.
I mean, I'm cutting my teeth. I only started into social media really with an intention during the pandemic. And that might not be unique, but I can tell you, even today, in my direct message, I got two in particular that were this inauthentic Miguel, like, hey, I want to connect. I'm not selling you anything, right? But they clearly were. And then
Mm.
one I got who I had accepted a connection a week or two ago, and it was the same thing, like, just happy to connect, really appreciate it, have a great day. And then, as they're turning around metaphorically, the tail hits you in the head, and they load in their Calendly and they load in a PDF and they load in all this stuff that, it's just like, it's kind of inauthentic, you
You
know?
got pitch slapped. That's what that's
Yeah.
called.
What is that called?
Pitch slapped.
Pitch, right, there you go. Pitch slapped. And Not only did I get pitch slapped, but I got pitch slapped again.
Yeah.
So let's keep this going here. AI, we spoke about, it's the big elephant in the room, the pink elephant, the thing that is kind of consuming a lot of the landscape of people's thinking and how to best leverage it. Other than that, which is a little bit of a loaded question, what are some other emerging technologies that are going to most impact the event industry? Or is that kind of a non-starter question because that is the thing?
No, not at all. I think that there are some really interesting things. It's a tough one right now because because of the pandemic, because of the COVID pandemic, a lot of companies went through this sort of break in their innovation cycle, right? They were developing different things and suddenly everybody had to go and create some sort of virtual platform or figure out how to do that. And so we're still there's still an impact of that going on, and there's still a lot of challenges, but also with a lot of the mergers and acquisitions going on over the last few years, there are sort of like 10, 15 big players in the industry that are sort of do everything. They're the all-in-one platforms, and some
Right.
are more focused on in-person events and some are more sort of virtual, but all of them to some extent sort of support registration, all that kind of stuff. And so most of these companies, and those will have the larger budgets, are focused on sort of small incremental improvements. They want to offer everything so that once they sort of capture a client, they can offer everything. The
Right.
problem I have with that is it's really useful from a data perspective, but it rarely means that they have the best in class in different parts of products, right? So they probably won't have the best registration system. They probably won't have the best video studio and et cetera, et cetera. And so I'm always looking for startups and kind of outliers to sort of throw some different spanners in the works and sort of, kind of suggest different things. I mean, at Event Tech Live, one of the tools that I saw that was just kind of refreshing, and I was like, okay, this is kind of cool. Was actually a software for exhibition portals, so exhibitor portals. You go to
Ah,
a lot of exhibitions, probably not the larger ones, but some of the not so large ones. And if you're exhibiting, you essentially have to order things through sort of a PDF, right? You sort of go
sure.
through and you tick a few things, and
Right.
sometimes you even ask to fax stuff, which is always kind of fun. But it's very much a sort of a relatively manual process. And so this company just created a platform to automate that. So it has, a very nice sort of micro website created that you can easily modify for your needs. And then it has a number of sort of calendar functions. So you can tell people, hey, there's a deadline coming up for ordering furniture or whatever it is. And it just puts that all together in one sort of nice, neat kind of format. And I think that kind of stuff really works, because it's kind of solving a problem that is causing a lot of hours of, work that doesn't really have to exist. And if it makes exhibitors and organizers' lives easier, then I'm all for it, right? So it doesn't have
Yeah.
to be flashy video automatic production. Sometimes it just needs to solve an issue.
Yeah. Boring, not sexy, but totally effective and optimizes everybody's time and the whole process. It's very, very cool. What is it that you're working on right now, Miguel, that most excites you today?
I think so. I'm relatively new to the publishing industry. This is my
Oh,
first media role. I've been 2.5 years in this role. And so every day I'm sort of learning and figuring out how to do that better. I see myself as an event industry person or a meetings industry person. And so writing about it and kind of informing people about it, I think is super exciting. I think one of the areas that I'm really excited about is this idea of creating indexes or indices. So rather than writing stories or just sort of creating more written content, we're looking at different ways that we can provide resources for people. And the idea being that, hey, if you're an event planner and you're looking at different destinations, are there ways for us to gather data and put that data in a way that is useful for you to make those decisions? And it can be for event technology tools, it could be for destinations, but somewhere where isn't a story, and stories are very important, but you can actually go in and find, one of the AI areas of discovery at the moment are these tools where AI can help you find a destination that's more sustainable, for example, where there's more direct flights. And because of where your workforce is distributed, you will actually save money and save, your carbon emissions by going to destination A instead of destination B. And so things like that, where we can gather different data points and actually interact with audiences and give them insights into why they should consider different tools or different destinations or different properties. I'm really excited about that because we've been sort of playing with that for a number of years, and it usually ends up being rather clunky. But now
Hmm.
we have the technology where we can actually do that. And so over the next kind of few months, I'm hoping to release some of these kind of tools to do that better. And of course, we also have a lot of content from many years of research. So we can take some of that content and
Right.
redevelop it and turn it into kind of these useful tools. Then I think it's the best way for us to, you know, create more legacy and create things that are really useful for our readers.
Yeah, and building on that, those takeaways where you use the example of the event recently in Thailand, indices, they're digestible, they're attractive, and the being able to synthesize all that information just that you have as a resource is just so valuable.
Mm.
That's cool. I look forward to seeing when they come out. Very, very cool. Well, Miguel, I feel like we could go on and on. We've left a little bit on the table. Maybe we can come back and visit sometime in the future and get a sense of what some of the foresight you had today, how it matched up with what's going on, and understand a little bit what's next and down the road. But before we go away, we're going to do what I call our segment, 20 questions. Technically not 20 questions, but it's in the spirit of 20 questions. So it's rapid fire answers, as quick and short, kind of word association. Are you ready?
Let's do it.
All righty, let's do it. Start your engines. What's the most interesting thing about you we wouldn't learn from reading your resume?
Used to be a musician and have some production credits on Spotify if you look deep enough.
Okay. So you're a Portuguese soul who built your career in the UK and are now raising a family and residing in Denmark. What's your favorite hidden gem destination in each country?
Portugal, I would say the west coast, south, but not the Algarve, the Alentejo coast. I really love it. It's very wild. It's very sort of wild surfing beaches. Really
Hmm.
nice area. England, I would say tough one, but probably Brighton. I lived in Brighton for a number of years, but that kind of south coast of England, there's a
Yeah.
really nice places. Not necessarily Brighton, but around there. And Denmark, I think where I live here, there's a lot of history and a lot of really nice small towns. If you appreciate kind of culture and the Danish sense of hygge, that idea of being cozy and
Mm,
warm and kind of having friends around, I think that's a really good place to experience that.
great, great tips. I heard you're a musician. What instrument do you play?
I dabble in guitar. I have an acoustic guitar, and bass was my sort of main instrument when I was actually active.
Gotcha. What are three must have things when you're traveling?
Hmm. Definitely noise canceling headphones. That's really helpful. My laptop, and I think I'll go pretty basic, but I always like to have some cereal bars or some kind of nuts, something like that, just to just know that I won't go hungry because you never know what time you're going to get through immigration or passport control or stuff like that. I just have like to have that guarantee that I'll
Gotcha.
survive.
Boy, that Northern European practicality sure has woven into you, huh?
Absolutely.
Which social media profiles are your favorites to follow?
Of other people, you're asking, right?
Yes.
So I like following, for example, a guy called Oscar Cerezalis.
Hmm.
He's MCI's strategy director, I believe. He borrows a lot from other people, so not all his content is original, but he's very open about that, and he always likes to kind of poke the bear and have kind of different ideas and throw some spanners in there and kind of ask some big questions. I think he's a really interesting person to follow. I think likewise, a lot of the heads of associations, Sheriff at PCMA and Paul at MPI, I think they have some interesting insights. I particularly like it when they share their first person experience, not so much when it's kind of things from the association, but when they
Right.
share their kind of first person experience. I think that's really interesting. And then any kind of planners that are talking from the heart. I think Anne Wen is somebody that I follow, and I know whenever she posts, it's always an authentic maybe it's a rant of some sort, but it comes from the heart, and it's just
Mhm.
hey, this annoys me, and we should figure out how to do this better. She's great to follow.
What is the next place on your bucket list or the
Hmm.
next thing
So
on your bucket list?
So I'll talk travel, I guess, is something I'd like to do. I'd love to go to Japan at some point.
Mm,
We have two young kids, ages 2 and 4. So kind of big, long haul travel is a little bit far away, I think, in our minds. I don't think we're quite ready for that yet. But Japan is somewhere that I'd love to go as a family and really spend some time and just sort of understand the culture, as
yeah,
much as you can in a few
yeah.
weeks or something like that. But yeah, I think it's just such a different place that I've never been to that I'd really like to spend some time exploring.
Yeah, I agree with you there. I've been over to that part of the world, but not specifically to Japan, and definitely appeals to me. Well, Miguel, we've come to the end of our time, and I just want to thank you for being so thoughtful and just the time that you took to share with our listeners and our tribe, as I like to call them, about all things in the meeting industry and how we can all expand our capacities and transform the industry and make it more connected, more engaged, and just a more of a powerful experience from every angle, from working in it to being an attendee at an event and everything in between. So just thank you for that.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate. I also feel like you're a very conscious connector of people, and I'm glad we connected and we had the chance to have this chat.
You got it. And everybody, thank you for joining us on this episode of the Keynote Curator podcast. Our guest, Miguel Neves from Skift Meetings, just a super, super informed, connected, insightful, and forward-thinking member of the tribe here at the Keynote Curators. So listen for our next episode, and thank you so much for joining us.